On October 16, 2011, the desert sun dipped low over the Las Vegas Motor Speedway, casting long shadows across the 1.5-mile oval. The grandstands trembled with anticipation, filled with fans who knew they were about to witness speed at its most dangerous extreme. 34 cars, the largest IndyCar field in years, were lined up, engines snarling, waiting for the green flag to unleash chaos. And among them, strapped into his number, 77 Sam Schmidt Motorsports machine, was Dan Weldon. He was no ordinary competitor that day. He was a two-time Indianapolis 500 champion, a driver who had tasted glory at the pinnacle of the sport, but was now chasing something different: redemption, opportunity, and perhaps destiny. This would be the race that defined the 2011 IndyCar season. It would also be the race that ended it in tragedy, a champion in limbo. Dan Weldon was no stranger to pressure, no stranger to odds stacked against him. Born in England, he had carved his path in American open-wheel racing with charisma and raw talent. By 2005, he had conquered the Indianapolis 500 and the IndyCar Championship, cementing himself as one of the sport's elite. In 2011, he returned to Indianapolis and stunned the racing world again, winning the greatest spectacle in racing for a second time. But despite those accomplishments, Wheldon found himself in an unusual position. He did not have a full-time ride that season. The economics of the sport, sponsor alignments, and shifting team dynamics had left him watching from the sidelines for much of the year. To the outside world, it was baffling. How could a driver of his caliber be left without a car? Then came Las Vegas. IndyCar's organizers wanted to end the season with a spectacle, a record-sized field, pack racing at breakneck speeds, and a headline-grabbing $5 million challenge. One lucky driver, chosen from a pool of part-timers and hopefuls, would start from the very back. If he could fight through the entire field and win, the jackpot would be his. That driver was Dan Weldon. For Weldon, it was more than just a gamble. It was a chance to prove himself once more, to remind everyone that he was still among the very best. He accepted the challenge with his trademark grin, confident yet grounded, knowing the risk and embracing it anyway. The tension in the desert. Race day dawned warm and clear, a postcard-perfect Nevada afternoon. But as cars rolled onto the grid, unease rippled through the paddock. Drivers muttered about the size of the field. 34 cars, more than usual on a tight, high-banked oval. The track's progressive banking and long straights encouraged pack racing, where cars ran side by side and nose to tail at nearly 220 miles per hour. It looked spectacular, but it was also terrifying. "I don't think it's a matter of if there's going to be a wreck," one driver warned before the green flag. "It's when." Fans, however, came for the show. They wanted drama, passes, side-by-side action. IndyCar had promised them exactly that, and the drivers, as always, strapped in and prepared to deliver. As the field formed up, Wheldon sat at the very back, visor down, his car vibrating beneath him like a caged animal. His mission: slice through chaos and climb to the front. The lights went green, and the storm began. The green flag and the fury. The first laps were a blur. Cars ran 3 wide, sometimes 4 wide, across the banking. The roar was deafening, the draft effect pulling cars into tight packs where the margin for error shrank to millimeters. From the back, Wheldon picked his way forward methodically. His skill in traffic was evident, reading gaps, choosing lines, staying calm in the maelstrom. On the broadcast, announcers tracked his progress, marveling at how quickly he was slicing through the field, but tension grew with every passing lap. The sheer density of cars was unsustainable. One twitch, one bump, one mistake could set off disaster. And on lap 11 it happened. The chain reaction. Midway through the pack, 2 cars made slight contact. At those speeds, slight was catastrophic. One machine veered sideways, and the chain reaction was instantaneous. Cars behind had nowhere to go, slamming into each other, climbing wheels, flipping into the air. What followed was chaos. 15 cars scattering like shrapnel, fireballs erupting, debris raining across the track. Dan Weldon, still charging from the back, had no time to react. His car struck another, launched skyward, and sailed into the catch fence at over 200 miles per hour. The impact was violent. metal twisting and shattering against steel. The car tumbled back to the track in flames before coming to rest in silence. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. The crowd, stunned into silence, watched smoke and fire cloud the desert air. A sport holds its breath. Rescue crews swarmed immediately. Fire extinguishers hissed, medical teams rushed in. The wreckage was everywhere, cars reduced to shells, drivers climbing from cockpits shaken but alive. Some limped away, others sat in disbelief, staring at the destruction around them. In the broadcast booth, commentators struggled for words. Even for a sport accustomed to danger, this was different. This was carnage. In the infield medical center, doctors worked frantically. Wheldon had been airlifted by helicopter, his injuries described as unsurvivable. Drivers gathered in pit lane, waited in a somber huddle. Minutes dragged into hours. The tension was unbearable. And then the announcement came. Dan Weldon was gone. He was just 33 years old, the race that never was. There would be no restart, no winner that day. The Las Vegas race was abandoned, the point standings frozen. Instead, the surviving drivers climbed back into their cars for one final tribute. Engines fired, but there was no roar of competition, only a slow, mournful 5-lap procession around the oval. 30 cars, scarred and battered, circling in honor of the man they had lost. Helmets hid tears, but the grief was palpable. Fans stood in silence, many weeping. It was not the finish anyone had imagined. It was a funeral march. Shockwaves through the sport. The death of Dan Weldon rocked IndyCar to its core. Safety had always been part of the conversation in motorsport, but Las Vegas forced it into the spotlight like never before. The sheer violence of the crash, the size of the field, the speeds involved, everything was questioned. Drivers were vocal. Many admitted they had feared something like this would happen. The criticisms were harsh. Too many cars, too much risk, too much emphasis on spectacle over safety. IndyCar, still reeling from the tragedy, faced a reckoning. For Wheldon's family, his wife Susie and their 2 young sons, Sebastian and Oliver, the loss was immeasurable. Friends and teammates remembered his charisma, his infectious smile, the way he treated fans as family. He had been more than just a driver. He was a beloved figure in the paddock, a bridge between fans and the sport. Legacy of a champion. In the years that followed, Wheldon's legacy took on a new dimension. He had already been working with engineers to help develop the next generation of IndyCar chassis, a design focused heavily on safety improvements. After his death, that work took on greater urgency. When the DW12 car, named in his honor, debuted in 2012, it represented not just a technical evolution, but a tribute to Wheldon's influence. The car featured better crash protection, safer cockpits, and design elements aimed at preventing the kind of airborne accidents that had claimed his life. Every time a driver strapped into a DW12, they carried a piece of Wheldon's legacy with them. Remembering Dan. For fans, the memory of Dan Weldon endures not in the violence of his final moments, but in the joy he brought to the sport. He was a showman, a competitor, and above all, a man who loved racing with every fiber of his being. At Indianapolis, his face still graces murals and memorials. His name is etched in the history books, not only for his victories, but for the impact his loss had on making the sport safer for those who followed. And in Las Vegas, where tragedy struck, his memory lingers in the desert wind, a reminder of the thin line between glory and catastrophe in motorsport. The lasting suspense. The 2011 Las Vegas tragedy remains one of the darkest days in IndyCar history. If you found this story moving and want to see more powerful, in-depth storytelling about the heroes and moments that have defined motorsport history, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel Fatal Limits, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter. Together, we'll keep honoring the legends and the lessons that racing has given us.